So even though you saw it as like, wow, it's a blessing for these guys, they're going to have so many orders, it's really not the case if you come to our side. We were forced to scale.
The technology related businesses is your passion.
Yeah, it's more than like some people say, okay, he's a hands-on guy, but it's like I'm gloves on. So one way of protecting the brand and making them some structure around this and creating that rigid path is one reason why I first thought of actually IPO. More than needing the funds or anything, I said, look, I want to future-proof this for 100 years. Hi, I'm Dulith Herath. You are watching Market Insight Sri Lanka.
Welcome to another episode of Market Insight Sri Lanka. As always, we are here to discuss with prominent business leaders from around the country about everything you need to know about capital markets. Don't forget to join us in this journey as we are providing you with exciting insight. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell notification icon below to be in the loop and to be notified about everything we do. Are you a fan of online shopping? If you are, Kapruka will be a familiar domain for you. Or you have bought some online orders and it must have been delivered to you through Grasshoppers. If you are a coffee lover, you must have grabbed your morning coffee from Java Lounge. Or you have hung up with your friends for a relaxed evening at Java. And now you must be thinking why we are talking about these businesses and what is the connection with capital markets. Well, you are about to find out. And today we are honored and privileged to have the entrepreneur and the mastermind behind all these businesses, Mr. Dulith Herath. Dulith, welcome to Market Insight.
Thanks for having me.
So Dulith, to start off the conversation, please tell us a little bit about the businesses you are in. You are an entrepreneur and most importantly, you are a pioneer of the e-commerce business in Sri Lanka. So take us through the businesses you are in to start off.
Sure. So there's a core business. And then as an offspin or kind of related to it, there are the other businesses that are still babies. It's like, okay, you have your big kid, your first kid, and then you have a lineup of the others, and some are in diapers, some are in kindergarten, some are about to enter college, and I would say Kapruka is about to get married, right? Yeah, it's that kind of a flow. So the core DNA is e-commerce, and the second, I would say, is really my interest is going into logistics. When it comes to e-commerce, it's traditional business. Even though you think it's really high tech and there's so much under it, it's really retail business. You buy a product and you sell it with a margin. It's simple as that. But if you take logistics, it's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more. The market is very the growth in logistics is sometimes bigger than actually the growth in e-commerce, if you really look at it. So that's that. And I have about another 9 more smaller companies that I've created underway, but I think we are going to talk more about e-commerce today, so I'll stick to Kapruka and Grasshoppers.
What about Java? We are here at Java, and you can tell a little bit of how you started the coffee shop business culture.
It's a funny story. It's okay. So I'm a software engineer by profession, and it's really my core is I love coding, and something I really missed here in Sri Lanka was a good roast, like a dark roast coffee, right? So the first Java was open just because I could get my coffee free, right? And I love bootstrapping companies. So, zero investments, first one was open in Java Road, hence the Java launch, and it's a nice name that came together. And it now grew to like now 9 outlets with zero investments, nothing, it's organically grew that way.
Dulith, now if I take your attention to Kapruka specifically, now Kapruka is the e-commerce platform, and you are a pioneer of e-commerce business in Sri Lanka, and Kapruka at the moment is the largest e-commerce platform in the country. So tell us a little bit about how you started Kapruka, and also what made you think that Sri Lanka was ready for online shopping at that time?
Yeah, so when I started Kapruka, e-commerce was not even in India, right? So this was back in like 2003. It's not that I had some magical insight. I think I was lucky enough that I was in the US when I started Kapruka, and I actually saw Amazon in front of me growing. I saw eBay in front of me growing, and it was kind of a no-brainer for me. It was written all over the walls that e-commerce is here to stay, and this whole e-commerce tsunami that kind of started in the West is going to come to Asia and to the rest of the world. It was a very clear no-brainer for me. So that's why I started. It's not like I had some magical insight or anything. I actually saw it working. So that's how very early it started. But the good thing is, when you start early, you have very less competition, and you have that first move approach, and you really have a lot of time to really bootstrap a company. If I had started Kapruka 2 years back, let's say for example, I don't think I'll be able to grow it the way I did now without any, we have taken, there is no funding up to date on Kapruka. There is zero loans, no debt, right? So it's kind of an unusual story for an e-commerce company to be like that. And I think it's because of the timing. When I started, I had all the time to organically grow it that way, without having to accelerate and rush it.
Okay, great. And with that inspiration now, if I ask who Dulith is, what is your background, and what you have learned so far to grow a business something like this, and what is your background? Tell us a little bit about you.
I think I'm an engineer and I'm a scientist. I think I'm not a businessman really. And as a scientist, what do scientists do? They stay in a lab, playing with the beakers and doing experiments, and they have the eureka moments. So that's my entrepreneurial journey, right? And if you had given me $100 million on this table and asked me to retire, I would not even, in a heartbeat, I'll say no. So it's not the money, it's none of that. Actually, what really excites me and keeps me going is when I see engineering, and when I see results of my experiments giving big results, like those aha moments. So that's really me. I mean, that is why I still code. I mean, even every night I would code 2-3 hours still. A lot of people ask me, why do you do that? You should be spending time on the P&L and looking at the whole business thing. But look, I'm an engineer, right? I need to do this, and I want to be able to be a coach in order to. Sometimes the coaches can't play, right? I want to be a coach that can also play still.
Oh, that's very inspirational, actually. So you're on the job, and this is the e-commerce and the technology-related businesses is your passion.
Yeah, it's more than like some people say, okay, he's a hands-on guy, but it's like I'm gloves on.
Okay.
Right, so.
Understood. And Dulith, now for the million-dollar question. Now there's a lot of talk among the investor community that Kapruka is going public. And if I ask you, is Kapruka going for an IPO and raise capital?
So you had to put me on the spot on that. No? I can't formally announce it because it is not 100% confirmed in my mind. So the card is strong and it's on the table. Okay, and we've explored multiple options of what we want to do for the next 5 years. Are we going to keep going organically? Are we going to do different things? What kind of capital do we need for that? So we've done the research, but I can't formally announce it yet. But I would say it's a very high possibility, and so red light, orange light, green light, right? So this is like between orange and the green.
That means it's close.
I don't know. I'm not saying that.
Great. So Dulith, in that case, if I may ask, what is the driving force behind you going for an IPO or considering an IPO and raise capital from public? What is the driving force behind that, and what are your objectives through that?
Okay, again, hypothetically speaking, right?
Correct.
All right, so I'll give you a silly reason, okay? The silly reason is I don't want the second generation or the third generation of this business to screw it up, okay? So I have 2 great kids, right? And they are right now looks very capable of, growing this to the next level. But I still feel looking at the data, there's a 70% chance your second generation will mess up your family business. There's a 90% chance your third generation will completely mess it up, right? So one way of protecting the brand and making them some structure around this and creating that rigid path is one reason why I first thought of actually IPO. More than needing the funds or anything, I said, look, I want to future-proof this for 100 years, right? And do I want an e-commerce or a technology company to be a private held, a family-owned business? Probably not, right? So I need more muscle in this. So that's the silly reason, okay? So the serious reason is, I think, so how I work in the Kapruka mindset is, here's core business, e-commerce, traditional, but if I look at 10 years, what's going to happen to any business if you are going to be spending all your money on your core business is your margins are going to get thinner and thinner and thinner. Your competition is going to be rising. It's going to be harder to move the needle because your core business is too established. Once it's established, you can't move the needle too much, right? Even though the fabric of the market is growing, your core business. So I have this middle area where I have the 3 to 5 year experiments that we are doing. Okay, so one experiment would be we are going to start a classifieds company under Kapruka, right? That is like used goods to be sold, and we want to be starting a payment gateway company like how Alipay started. If you look at Amazon today, they went into AWS, all those other things, right, out of their core business. So those are short-term, when I say short-term, I'm talking 3 to 5 year kind of things that we are good at already, like Grasshoppers, we were good at logistics. So I separated it out and, created a business out of it. Like that, there are stuff that you can extract from the core business and create these new businesses that are 3 to 5 years, low risk, medium risk, and has a potential of becoming 10x on its own, right? And then there is this 10-year thing that I have. Like this is like high risk stuff, right? Like I would want to start a digital car wash, right? You order on WhatsApp and a guy comes and washes your car for $500. I have no experience in doing this, right? It's very distant from core business, but it's something that the entrepreneur believes in and we might be able to figure it out, but little bit of funding, but high risk, but maybe high gain, right? So that's how I really look at this. So can I do all this with just core businesses profits, right? Probably not, right? Because then I'm doing injustice to the core business by not doing all these other things, right? So that is where I felt I think going public and or getting an external investor, those options come into play, because then the investor actually has a unique opportunity. They are riding on the security of Kapruka and betting on something that can grow, like the classifieds website, for example, as I said, 10x, than directly going into a classified website that's run by me for that return. You understand? So that's how I structured it. So silly reason and the serious reason.
Okay, silly reason makes sense because we have seen a lot of companies going into trouble with when it goes to second and third generation. So it is not going to happen for Kapruka for sure then. And also, when you mention about this business expansion, so the main objectives are investing in new business ventures, as you mentioned, not really focusing on the core business Kapruka. That's the main objective behind the IPO.
So any kind of a IPO generally has to list out the projects that they want to do. In my case, I think what I want to look at is really new stuff than core business. So one is, I can announce it here, actually it's going to be called soldout.lk. So coming after my, the whole controversy that happened, we registered the name soldout.lk and it's going to be a classifieds website, right? Okay. That's going to be entirely used goods, and it's different to typical classified websites, but it has its own e-commerce pieces in it. That's one, and there's another one called cross-border that we are trying to do, that is about selling Sri Lankan products on US Amazon, Australian Amazon, and UK eBay. So in established external e-commerce platforms will sell Sri Lankan products through Kapruka. That's another one. And then we have the whole Grasshoppers going on. And then we have something called the global shop that lets people in Sri Lanka buy from e-commerce platforms outside of Sri Lanka and get it home delivered without any hassle, less friction, all that. So it's actually, it's quite globally centric because the growth potentials are much, much higher. So those are the main 4 projects that we've identified so far.
Okay, so that's a lot of creative business ideas there itself. And Dulith, now if I may ask, if you go for a IPO, you need to get investments from public, and in that case, what would be your main selling proposition? Is it going to be the creative new businesses or the technology, or what is your main selling proposition going to be?
I think, yeah, so as I said, you have a guarantee of a successful, profitable business. It's a household brand name like Kapruka. But through this entity, you are going to be betting on projects that has a 10x or a 50x potential. And so I think that's a unique proposition. Normally, when you kind of invest in something, you would look at the core business only. For me, it's about this 10-year journey, the Kapruka enterprise that I am going to build, and I don't want to be only e-commerce, right? If you are going to do just e-commerce, you are a sitting duck. Like I might be able to show you all the numbers today, but can I sell the same thing in 5 years when there are about 10 different global competitors also coming here and doing e-commerce? No, you are going to shrink your margins has to shrink eventually, right? So anybody, I think if you are investing in an e-commerce company, hoping that company is going to be 10x in another 5 years, yes, it can, but it can immediately be a sitting duck the moment like serious competition comes in. So with that in mind, only I have set up these projects that is different from core business, right? So, I missed one actually. So we are going to be starting a payment gateway. Okay. So payment gateways are really bank centric today in Sri Lanka, just like Alipay kind of thing. But this is going to be extremely e-commerce friendly payment gateway that will be from the restaurant POS machines to websites to, it's like similar to like Square, which is a US company, kind of a similar setup. So these are very different things that's going to run under Kapruka now.
Great. So thank you, Dulith. We'll go for a quick break and we will be right back. Welcome back. You're with Market Insight, and today we are with Mr. Dulith Herath, the entrepreneur behind Kapruka.com. So, Dulith, what is your experience so far in the listing process? I believe that you have gone at least a few steps in the listing process so far. So, what is your experience so far about the process, and how it is challenging or not challenging? How are you facing it?
It's not challenging, really. It's I don't think we being a technology company makes it any harder or easier for that process, and CSC is very, very inviting, and I think it will open a whole new chapter for CSC if an e-commerce company goes online. This has to happen one day or the other, right? In Sri Lanka, there has to be a first e-commerce company that goes public, so it has to happen one day or the other. But the process is fairly easy, and actually the heavy lifting is done by the firm that we are utilizing for the process. So it's more like I haven't seen any friction at all. Nothing to highlight.
Nothing to highlight. And so if Kapruka goes public, that is going to be the first listed tech company in the Colombo Stock Exchange. So far, we don't have any tech companies listed, and it is something new for our investors.
There is e-channel link, but if you call it a tech company,
correct.
Somewhat is.
Somewhat, yes.
But this is like straight shot tech company.
Correct. Yeah. That is my idea. So
on the main board, at least, yeah.
On the main board.
Yeah.
So in that case, will it be challenging for you that you are going to be, let's say, the only tech company in the stock exchange, and it is new for investors? And how do you think that is going to be? Is it challenging for you, or how are you going to face that?
Same thing now. When I thought of starting e-commerce back in 2003, I had to wear the same hat and say there's nobody there, and I think it's better I do this before there is too many others, because what if some other tech company comes and creates a bad taste out there, creates a failure story. Oh, like at least you start today and you drop the next day morning, right? Then it can mess up the entire the look and feel of this, right? And hopefully Sri Lanka might even have a complete different board for tech companies, within the next 5-10 years, like an Nasdaq kind of a thing, where you just have tech stuff. So it will happen eventually.
So there will be interest for tech companies, I'm sure.
There has to be, yes.
Correct. And in that case, now, how do you propose valuing a tech company? Now, that is something that is very unique for Colombo Stock Exchange, because most of the companies, the listed companies, are valued based on the net asset value. And for a tech company, that doesn't make sense. So how are you going to value the tech company, and what is your proposing process for that?
Yeah, so that's a challenging one, because it's not there in Sri Lanka, and now generally Sri Lankan investors are not used to that process. But so PE ratio is the main indicator, and for a very successful tech company, which is zero debt, high profitability, unusual numbers like the conversion rates of Kapruka is like 6.5%. In e-commerce, general conversion rates are around 2%, and Kapruka's customer acquisition cost or the marketing cost is less than 5% of our revenue. This is never heard of in e-commerce, because usually the most expensive thing in e-commerce is you spend so much money to acquire the customers, and e-commerce customers are not loyal. They'll shop with you today and tomorrow they can go somewhere else. So Kapruka has a unique way of marketing, where our marketing budgets are about 5%, and so there are all those very unique golden material in this company that makes it so much easier for the valuation. So we don't have to really massage or test anything. It's just there, easy from the moment you open the books. But so PE ratio, and asking for a 15 to 20 kind of a PE ratio for a very successful tech company is very normal, and in globally. That's one way of looking at this. And you would remember, right, Facebook, for example, when they first went, I think their PE ratio is 114 times, right, when they first went public. I don't think we can demand that kind of a thing, because this is Sri Lanka. So PE ratio is the number that we are going to go with.
And so what are the other unique features of the tech company when it comes to financials? If you can give us few indicators.
E-commerce, you mean?
Yeah.
I think so. That's my forte. So when you say tech companies, it's from IT to all those things. But if you really look at an e-commerce lens, one is you have to look at the conversion rate of your site. So because whatever you put into the funnel up here, the customers who are actually converting at the bottom is your bread and butter. Right? So conversion rates is one key element. Second is your customer acquisition cost. It's easy to spend $1 million and bring in all that revenue, right? Spend $1 million on advertising and bring in so many customers who will only be with you once or twice and take your discount and disappear. So that's very, it's not a sustainable thing, right? So you have to look at the advertising cost of a company. I've seen many startups today that seem to be doing well when you look at the top line, but when you go down, like, oh, you spent $5,000 on Facebook ads last month, like what? There goes your everything, right? And how many of those are coming back? So so conversion rate, your marketing cost on your brand, and then your fulfillment cost of an e-commerce company. So because the delivery, most of the e-commerce companies will outsource the delivery to another company to do, and there you have a huge bottleneck there. Right? So in Kapruka, we do the fulfillment ourselves, or we use Grasshoppers, our own company, to do that. And so we really optimize it, and we have full control from warehousing to the last mile delivery, and from the returns to exchanges to all that is in this one ecosystem. Right? So nobody can call and say, look, tomorrow we are not working and we don't have to shut down. Everything is in our control from end to end.
That's some creative ways of value creation for investors, in my opinion. And
it was never done for that purpose. Okay. It was, the whole listing idea is pretty new for us. That the whole company was never built with that purpose. It was bootstrapped from day one.
But when you come to this level,
yeah, it's like,
it is all
I can check mark all these things, right out the bat.
It's already.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Dulith. We'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Welcome back to Market Insight, and today we are with Mr. Dulith Herath, the entrepreneur of Kapruka.com. Dulith, we have seen multiple tech unicorns emerging from around the world recently, and it has become a revolution in the business world. And if I may ask, are you aspiring to be the first tech unicorn in Sri Lanka?
I don't think there are any unicorns in Sri Lanka yet. So you're
yet.
talking a $1 billion valuation,
Correct.
right? Yeah, so that's, for an entrepreneur, it's my holy grail, right? And it's there, up there. If you count my wish list, it's at the top to have be the first unicorn company in Sri Lanka. But I don't think we can do that with just the local market. It's going to be a very tough thing to do within the local market. So my e-commerce journey has to grow cross-border if I am to reach that, and I'm betting high on that. So there are products like this, the Amazon cross-border thing that I was talking about, selling Sri Lankan products outside of Sri Lanka, and that may be the ticket or the path to the unicorn. But it's definitely an ambition, and as an entrepreneur, it's always great to have a top of the mountain iceberg view. Always like, look, I'm already here. That looks pretty impossible, but at least there's the challenge, right? So it's there on the cards.
Great. And so what are your views about the use of technology in Sri Lankan businesses? Where do we stand compared to the rest of the world? Do you think our businesses are using the technology, the current available technology, enough, or we are still lagging behind quite a lot?
No, I think we are doing fine. And if you look at Sri Lanka, our IT space or our software industry is very unique, and it's very robust. And you've already seen the results of that, of companies like Virtusa, etc., doing so well here. That's because they all went out, right? I don't think any tech company, if you are just thinking about the local space, are going to crack it. It will be all right, but it's not going to be like super awesome. So if you take a brand like Dilmah, for example, why are they so successful today? Not because they were just here. They had a complete global vision. If you look at take a small country like Israel, for example, right? They are not interested. The people are there, they're living there, but all of their business is all over the world, right? So I think Sri Lankan tech space will also need to always look at it that way. I can probably talk about one of my friend's companies, so Microimage, my good friend Harsha Purasinghe's company. It's an HRIS system, and they're so successful outside of Sri Lanka than in Sri Lanka, right? And when you have about 50-60% of your revenue coming from outside, then you immediately automatically become global, and you go set up in other countries and things like that. So I don't want to think about it like, okay, you're a Sri Lankan company, are you tech savvy enough? I like the question to be like, okay, you live in Sri Lanka, you started in Sri Lanka, but are you tech savvy enough globally? So that's the lens.
And what about the e-commerce space in Sri Lanka? What is the growth potential? Where do we stand at the moment, and where can you grow into?
So e-commerce, forget Sri Lanka. If you take the entire region, it's like a fabric, right, of e-commerce, and this is stretching automatically. You don't need to do much because the market is growing as we speak, right? And the pandemic accelerated probably by 10 times, right? So if I look at, when I see a 15-year-old kid on the road, I look at him like, hey, you are my future customer. You are never going to go into a mall, right? You are almost born with a smartphone in your hand, so you are going to be an e-commerce guy. So it's a no-brainer that this is going to keep growing, and not only in Sri Lanka, regionally. And it's very little you need to do to try to help grow that market. There are some products now, let's say I'm trying to sell cars, for example, right? I'll have to work hard on growing the market because the market is already grown to a certain limit. When it is e-commerce, it's a free ride,
And also now pandemic, this is a challenge for many businesses, but for e-commerce it would have been a blessing. And how does pandemic treating your side of the businesses, and what are the challenges or opportunities you see from the pandemic, how you are facing that?
So even though you saw it as like, wow, it's a blessing for these guys, they're going to have so many orders, it's really not the case if you come to our side. We were forced to scale, right? We were not ready to do 25,000 orders a day. We were forced to do that, and that comes with a cost. That comes with we getting into trouble. We can't scale. We are losing customers. We are disappointing potential customers who would have had a good experience if they were not forced to use this. So all those challenges came in, but it's more than an opportunity. Actually, if you ask me what the pandemic has done to us, it's like, oh, this is forcing us to scale. It's tough when you're forced to scale, right? So from outside, it looks, wow, these guys are getting all these orders. You go inside, it's like, oh my God, how are you going to do all this? So it's a double-edged sword.
Okay. So as an entrepreneur now, entrepreneurs like you have these creative ideas, the creative businesses, but a vibrant stock market would have been the best option for businesses to gain capital, equity capital, to raise equity capital. And in your view, how important is the capital market for businesses? And also, in the current conditions, do you think that these options are facilitated well enough for businesses, capital raising through the capital market?
So I'm not an expert on this. What I'm good at is building businesses. Right. Am I an investor? Can I wear an investor hat? Am I an economist? I cannot check those boxes. But I can give you my opinion on things like that. I feel one of the most expensive ways to raise capital is giving up equity. Right. Again, it's a double-edged sword. So giving up equity in a profitable company, 20% of equity, and borrow, taking back, let's say, $10 million, it can be very, very expensive to you if you turn back and see, why did I do that 10 years back? Right? There are companies like Dell who wanted to buy it back from the stock market because it was doing so well. Right? So it's a tough call. And Sri Lankan right now, it's kind of a no-brainer to put your money in the stock market. Right? It's like if you look at the interest rates and the way the stock market's been also behaving, it's kind of a no-brainer to put your money in the stock market. But then I can say that today, and tomorrow it can change. So it's very volatile.
Okay. Now, as you said, you are not an economist, but if I may ask you, the current economic conditions and the political policies at the moment, how these conditions are, is it favorable for businesses or challenging, or do you think there can be any...
From what perspective, like from a stock market perspective?
From a businessman perspective, as an entrepreneur, you are doing businesses in these situations. So
yes, so I always have my policy is I don't care about what the government's trying to provide to us, what facilities are there. I ignore that completely. And when I build a business, I make sure I don't have to depend on any of that. Right? So just like when I started back in 2003, there was not even a delivery company here, right? So I didn't wait for the post office to do e-commerce. I got my own fleet and got it to do. So everything I've built so far today has very, very little dependency on those policy stuff. But let's bring a issue like this import restriction issue, for example. But it applies across the board, right? Not only to me. So like if you look at Java launch today, we have a lot of issues with, we can't bring certain material now. But it applies to all restaurants. Right? If I look at it in that way, I can take it as an opportunity, saying, look, now government has come and introduced a new problem for all of us. Who's going to solve it first? Right? So I always wear that hat and look at problems.
That's a very interesting way of looking at problems, I think, for anybody. And thank you, Dulith. We'll go for a quick break and we will be right back. Welcome back to Market Insight. We are with Mr. Dulith Herath, the entrepreneur of Kapruka.com. Dulith, now what are the major changes you see as, now let's say you go public and heading a public listed company and heading a privately held company. What are the major changes you would be facing?
So when it's actually the founder still running the company, I think it should be less challenging than, if I have created something that is completely run by a CEO and now this is going to go public, and that can be more challenges there. So since the founder, I'm going to be running it, I actually look forward to those. Second thing there is the fact that not being able, if you are able to set up a proper board that supports you, and that's the key, right? As long, CSE is not going to be calling and telling me what to do when you are building a business like this. It's actually the boards that's going to be working hand in hand with me on this. So picking the right board members right now is one of the biggest challenges for me, because I can't find e-commerce and a finance guru who is good at e-commerce today. But we have to start somewhere, right? So I'm going to work on it, but I think the key thing is to make sure you have a very supportive board who understands the vision of the founder and the entrepreneur and take it forward. Like for example, when I'm trying to start a payment gateway, right? And here's Kapruka and you're trying to do a payment gateway. So the board, I don't know how the board is going to look at that. And there can be many challenges. I look forward to that, but finding that board composition is going to be the toughest challenge for me.
Okay. So in line with that, investor relations is going to be also another key element once you become a listed company. And how are you planning to maintain the investor relations? Are you going to use technology and the requirements from the investors, the dividends and the information, and how are you going to manage this end of it?
So good question. I definitely don't expect today's investor to get up in the morning and look at the paper for the today's his portfolio performance, right? There's going to be apps, there's going to be multiple ways they will be looking at the brands that they have invested in, and I actually look forward to giving them a very macro level picture of what's going on. And there are multiple ways of doing this. I'm not talking billboards, I'm not talking TV ads, nothing like that. So from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook to all those digital media, we need to use to also now talk to the investors. I wish there was more retail market here in Sri Lanka, more stock retail market than institutional. If there are 25-year-olds who has put in 100,000 rupees into Kapruka, would have been a great guy that I can always keep showing him what we do, right? So, but definitely I'll be using technology to its maximum to communicate what we do at a macro level.
Yeah, so this more youngsters coming into the stock market, I think that is the future. And with the digitalization process of the Colombo Stock Exchange, and with that, I think there will be a lot of youngsters coming into the market, and that will be a blessing for you. And how do you look at this digitalization process of the stock market coming into play? How will that help you?
It's very important. I think, so like apps like Robinhood, I use all the time. I'm sitting here in Sri Lanka and investing in these companies outside the world, and it's fun. I mean, it's like, they've taken all the I don't know, the darkness or the kind of a stigma and the taboo of investing into stock market and put it on an app and just given it to you like, hey, this is like playing solitaire now, right? And you're not putting big money, right? Just put in 50,000 rupees, try to make it 100,000 in a week or lose it, right? So I think bringing the retail market, you have to bring in technology. And so the CSE's, the app is a great move. I was so happy to see that. But I wish now there are more startups that are coming in, and CSE will open up and give APIs to these new startups like Robinhood, for example, right? And that will come in and create better apps in doing this. And one more thing is about crowdfunding. So we don't have that option. It's a simple rule we can change and allow the number of board the shareholders, right? That's the limitation of, we can't do crowdfunding in Sri Lanka because there's a limitation on the number of shareholders. If they relax that kind of thing, so we'll be more future-proof.
And also, I think this e-IPO option available in the stock exchange app, that
Correct.
is going to be very helpful when you go for the IPO, because it's a matter of clicking
Correct.
from your mobile phone, you can invest in the IPOs.
But you'll be surprised to know that how many people don't know about it. You ask 100 people, like, do you know about the CSE app? We need to really shout more about it.
There
It's a
needs to
great
be a
tool.
lot of awareness needs to be happening.
Yeah.
And also, Dulith, now over the last 10 years period, if we take the listed companies, most of the companies has grown and they have given good results, and their profitability growth and everything has been good. But if you look at the share price, it was very volatile, and especially the period between 2015 2019, we have gone through kind of a dark period in the stock market. So how these dynamics going to challenge you when it comes to a listed company? Once you become a listed company, how will this share price volatility is going to affect you?
I'm zero worried about that because of the industry that I'm in. As I said, this fabric of e-commerce is stretching, right? So when your industry is stretching and at that kind of a speed, the worst case scenario of listing your company is you can lose 20% of your company. Can go to zero and you could lose 20% of your company by going public. This is from looking at it from a company perspective, not from an investor perspective. So you asked me the question like, okay, what if that keeps moving up and down, right? So I'm not worried about it too much because I know for a fact that the e-commerce, how it's growing, and I read it very well, the market on that. So I'm not too worried about the volatility there. It will eventually stabilize.
Great. Now, Dulith, Kapruka is one of the businesses you are involved in, and I think Grasshoppers is another business that is connected to Kapruka.
Closely connected.
Closely connected. So tell us a little bit about Grasshoppers and how the synergies work, and what are your objectives of having these businesses together?
So it's like, what if Amazon went and bought UPS or FedEx, right? It's that kind of a thing is the need for it, because in most Asian markets, social commerce is very strong. What I mean by social commerce is people selling on Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, etc. Those platforms, they generate the order and they push it on to a courier to do the last mile delivery. And so there is a big split in that. So there's traditional e-commerce, there's marketplace e-commerce, there's used market e-commerce, and there's social commerce, which is mushrooming. So these are like, these guys are who are generating 5 to 10 orders a day, but there's thousands of them. So Grasshoppers is unique in two ways. One is it is 100% e-commerce focused delivery company. So we don't do normal package delivery. It is engineered to do e-commerce delivery. So from the cash on delivery app to the tracking, from the barcode, the QR codes, the picking up, the last mile delivery, all that is built with technology in mind. So we have plugins for WooCommerce to Shopify, all this. So the people, even to Facebook to some extent, if some small guy wants to start a business and he only has 5 orders a day, we give him the tools to connect to us, and that creates him the barcodes, and we deliver the products around the country. The idea is that we are, and it's also unique in a way that it's a social enterprise. So it's not a traditional company. So if you look at all the 40 plus hubs that we have around the country, they're run by entrepreneurs. So if I'm sending a package to Trincomalee, I'm sending the package first to an entrepreneur in Trincomalee, and he figures out how to get it delivered in his area. Actually, that's why we survived the pandemic when everything was shut down. We were not compelled to pay anybody. They also understood that they are part of this ecosystem. We don't have orders, I don't have orders, so we all go into an open mode. So we survived that way. Whereas brick and mortar courier companies will have to still pay the rents and the supply those support those facilities. So it's a very unique thing. The idea of the name Grasshoppers came also because I'm using grassroots level resources to hop and do e-commerce. So that's the quick pitch about Grasshoppers.
So if I say that it is running a logistics company really without having vehicles or logistical assets?
Absolutely. I don't even own a helmet. in this whole company. If you look at the net assets of the company, it's like chairs, laptops, stuff like that. We don't have vehicles, nothing.
But it's a fully fledged
Yeah,
logistics company.
it covers the whole island without owning a single moving asset. So
that's a great concept. And Dulith, if I may ask now, there will be a lot of entrepreneurs who are watching us right now and who are aspiring to be somebody like you. And they also must be thinking, what is the right time for us to go for a listing? And is that a good option for us? So what is your advice for the entrepreneurs or businesses who are looking or thinking about getting listed?
Right. Okay. So I went through that. I'm still not 100% done with it either. The general advice is you need to be able to really see far. Now I'm able to see about 10 years ahead of me. And if you can only see like a year ahead of you or 2-3 years ahead of you, maybe listing is not for you. But if as an entrepreneur, you are a very tall person, you should be able to see beyond the crowd, beyond the mountains. And you have to get your team to believe in what you are seeing out there. You're going to say, yeah, I see it, there it is, let's go, right? So if you have that kind of clarity about this gut feeling about, yeah, in 10 years I'm going to bring this here and I'm pretty sure I can do it, I think then you need the capital, right, to do that. And so the stock market is one option, but then you kind of have the feeling, okay, I know where to go, now I need to fill my tank, right? You know the journey, right? You see that. So once you have that, I think that's when you really start looking at these options of raising funds.
Okay. And Dulith, if I may ask now, the investors of the Colombo Stock Exchange in general, what would be your advice to them? Is it a good investment option, and how should they do it right, the investment, do it right? What would be your advice to them?
Again, it's not my expertise. I only can run and build businesses. I'm not an investor myself. But with that disclaimer, I think let's take a normal retail guy, right, who wants to invest in the retail market stock. He should have good domain knowledge of that company or of that field. Just because you don't get caught up in the hype, right? So it's very easy for you get a call from a friend and say, Machang, there's this listing happening and these guys are showing these numbers, shall we try? And if you know nothing about that domain and you're blindly putting money because of the hype, I think that's not the way to do it. But you have to have some knowledge about the domain. I mean, I will never go and invest in Coke. I know it's a great company, but I know nothing about beverage business, right? But I will go and put my money in Etsy. It's in the US because it's a company I've been following for a long time. I know the DNA of the founder. I know his thinking patterns, and so I'm comfortable now. And that's another thing. Even if you don't know the domain, if you know the captain of the ship and how he is, and if you kind of believe in his traits, I think that's another way that you can look at it and say, okay, I don't know much about the domain, but I know this guy. I'm going to bet on that. Than relying on a phone call or just seeing the TV ads or getting caught up with the hype. I think you need to look into those.
That's a great advice. And the last question. So the investors who are looking to invest in Kapruka when it becomes a listed company at your IPO. So what is your invitation to them to join your journey to be a unicorn, a first unicorn of Sri Lanka? Or what would be the journey for them with you?
I'm not ready to make that announcement, so I don't want to lose my thunder by trying to make it up now.
Okay.
Right? I have to sleep on it, think about it, and give a right message. So I'll have to decline that question. Sorry about that.
All right. Great. Thank you very much, Dulith, for being with us today. Thank you for watching Market Insight, and we will meet you soon with another exciting episode.